You know, the Bill of Rights is a reaction to having a constitution that was written in a very, a very tense period of time, and there were some things that, frankly, got left out. And in many of the colonies, there was already basically what we know as the Fifth Amendment already in place in a number of colonies that protected individuals. And really, this Fifth Amendment is all about individual protection. And that's why the newly formed country, and when Madison and the other founding fathers thought about the concept of some additional First Amendments, if you will, the first set, Bill of Rights, as we now know it, they tried to adopt certain of the provisions that were already in place in other colonies, and the Fifth Amendment is one of those. You can hardly turn on a television without hearing about the Fifth Amendment, right? You turn on an episode of Law and Order and someone is given their Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. That's the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. You can hardly open a Montana newspaper, but that you learn about takings or eminent domain. That's the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. You can't watch a congressional hearing hardly. If you watched Ken Lay of Enron go before Congress, he exercised his Fifth Amendment rights. I take the Fifth, they would say. So the Fifth Amendment is really something that in popular culture is something that we know a lot about now, 200 plus years, 225 years from when it was written. The U.S., I think, would be dramatically different without the Fifth Amendment. Think about just the Miranda rights that we all understand with law enforcement, that you have the right to remain silent, which is the right against self-incrimination, right? The right not to incriminate yourself. Think for a little bit about what America would be like if you didn't have the right not to incriminate yourself. And just think about that for a moment. In other words, law enforcement could find ways for you to incriminate yourself. It's really a basic tenet that our founding fathers thought about some, 200 plus years ago, that came from English common law, where people weren't afforded that same courtesy in England. And so, in the United States, there was a very, very strong feeling about individual liberty. And to not have that is almost unimaginable in today's society.
Subject to.
I think the Fifth Amendment really is one of the better understood amendments of the Bill of Rights, right? There are a number of the Bill of Rights that you kind of wrinkle your forehead about, where you think about, why does it matter that we have the right to refuse soldiers who want to enter our homes to live in them? That just doesn't seem modern to us. But the thoughts about the Bill of Rights, individual liberties, still are very, very much alive in America. And I think it's, of the 10 amendments that make up the Bill of Rights, I think it, along with the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, probably are the most current, if you will, of the amendments and best understood. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to care about what really is the fundamental part of democracy, right? Democracy is about every individual exercising their rights to participate in this great government of ours. Churchill said famously, and I will botch the quote, but that of all of the governments of the world, democracy, with all of its fits and starts and inefficiencies, is by far the worst, and there's none better. And that really goes back to these individual liberties that the Founding Fathers brought forth both in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And for the Fifth Amendment specifically, this belief in individual liberty, in the belief that we have individual rights that our government can't take away from us, or rights to property that can't be taken away without some sort of eminent domain action, our rights to being innocent until proven guilty, our right not to incriminate ourselves, our right to be able to say to a court, I'm simply not going to answer that question because I believe I would incriminate myself. I think those are just the real key tenets to democracy, and that we ought to care as a people that those are things that people know, our kids know, our grandkids know, that's the core of who we are as a people, as Americans, about individual liberties and freedom.